A blue pediatric crash cart skids into view outside room 418 as a small boy wheezes through a sudden storm in his lungs. Nurses strip open a plastic epinephrine ampule. The fluorescent lights hum. The smell of antiseptic is sharp on the tongue. He ate cashew? How long ago? Dr. Chen's voice is calm but clipped. 5 minutes. Less, the nanny answers. Dark hair pulled tight into a bun. Scrubs borrowed from the hospital laundry. She keeps both hands on the boy's small shoulders as monitors blink. Theo, look at me. In, out, your humming song. Theo tries to hum. It's thin, reedy, a paper kite in a heavy wind. Epi in, Nurse Williams says. Albuterol neb running. On the wall, a framed poster reminds staff about medication safety. Verify identity, verify allergies. The nanny points with a trembling finger. Cashew, sesame, they're on his record. Dr. Chen's eyes flick to the chart. We've got it. He turns to the nanny. You the mother. I'm his nanny. I'm the one who's here. Who has consent? His father. Someone's calling him. She glances at Theo's phone, now locked with a parental code. She doesn't have it. She never has it. Dr. Chen nods to a clerk. Attempt parental contact, meanwhile stabilize and monitor. The room steadies, one breath, then another. Theo's lips pinken, the oxygen numbers climb. Only then does Dr. Chen explain, voice lowered, practical. We're going to do a standard blood type and cross-match in case he needs transfusion. It's routine with a reaction this strong. He doesn't like needles, the nanny says softly. He'll be brave if you tell him first. The nurse looks her in the eyes. You're doing good. She turns to Theo, gentle. Hey buddy, quick poke. Then we'll find you a blue popsicle. Deal? Theo nods. The curtain rustles with a sudden draft. The hallway has shifted, energy rushing in before bodies. 2 men in severe suits, an assistant with a tablet, and behind them a man whose face lives on magazine covers. Camera ready tan, a watch you don't leave unattended. Smile like a switch he turns on and off. Graham Vale. He doesn't look at the nanny. What happened? Anaphylaxis to cashews at a birthday party, Dr. Chen answers. He keeps a neutral tone, used to egos and emergencies sharing rooms. He responded to epinephrine. We've sent for a panel to make sure we don't miss anything. No tests, one of the suited men says immediately. Not until council reviews. You have authorization? This is an emergency setting. Dr. Chen doesn't blink. Standard protocol. The nanny raises her chin but says nothing. Her phone buzzes. A text from another nanny in the group chat. Are you okay? No names, only shorthand. Instinctively she types back, Theo stable. In the lab, tubes spin. 15 minutes later, Dr. Chen comes back with a page of numbers. There's a moment where he stares as if the numbers might rearrange into something less complicated. He looks up, steady. Mr. Vale, he says, we need to verify something about the charted parental blood types. The results we have don't align in a way that's possible genetically. Graham's jaw tightens. Meaning, according to the record, both listed parents are AB positive. He taps the page. Theo is O negative. The nanny blinks. She hears the words, but they don't have a place to land. That's not a misprint? Dr. Chen asks the clerk. The clerk shakes her head. Graham's lawyer steps forward. You are not to perform any further testing without written consent from Mr. Vale. Dr. Chen folds the results with quiet care. We already did the minimum for safety. I'm letting you know because this kind of discrepancy could be due to a charting error. We'll double check. The nanny's mouth is dry. She hears her own voice. I'm O negative. I donate. She doesn't know why she says it. Maybe because it's the only sentence that feels like stepping on a floorboard that won't give. On the monitor, Theo's oxygen drops, then steadies again. The room breathes with him. In the hallway, a janitor pauses with a mop, watching rich men who move through spaces as if the air owes them rent. Witnesses will say later they felt the tension before they understood it. Like Dr. Chen will say later, the most honest thing in the room was the number on the paper. Disclaimer, like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. 48 hours later, the boy is home. The house sits on a rise above the city, glass and steel. The nanny enters through a door that never exists on the glossy magazine spreads. In the staff kitchen, there's a bulletin board with a rota, cleaning, laundry, meals. She pins a grocery list for allergies with blunt tacks, double circles around cashew. She writes in firm block letters. It feels like a spell. In her pocket is a hospital bracelet cut from Theo's wrist, folded small. The numbers have weight. Most people in houses like this never use the stairs. The nanny takes them 2 at a time, a bundle of Brio trains under one arm. Theo wants to run them together in a line too long for any table. He's 5, his world is tracks. He puts engines nose to tail, clicks plastic held together by magnets strong enough to feel irresistible. She watches him test the pull of what sticks to what. Out back, a heated pool curves like a question mark. Inside, a locked office holds the curated life. Trophies and a framed first issue of a tech magazine with a younger Graham smiling under the headline, The Disruptor. Beside it, a photo. Him and Serena in white, on a beach, clouds like gauze. Under glass, a chrome Helix's keycard sits like jewelry. According to public records, Helix's Fertility opened its flagship clinic 3 years ago with promises: compassion, access, innovation. According to glossy brochures, they treat families who cannot conceive. According to employees who asked not to be named, quotas were discussed in terms more fitting to warehouses than wombs. The nanny checks Theo's EpiPens. One in the backpack, one in the drawer, 2 in the diaper bag now used for trains and crayons. She lines them like soldiers who will never desert him. Her phone vibrates. An unknown number, a text. I'm Caleb Reed, independent reporter. I cover health systems. We should talk about what the lab found. The nanny stares at the words. No one gives out the staff numbers, but phones are porous. Rich people's houses have more screens than walls. She replies, I can't. NDAs. Caleb texts, I get it. I'm not here to splash you online. There's a pattern here. According to a nurse at City General, there's a discrepancy in several cases involving Helix's client families, ABO types that don't add up. Sometimes it's a charting error, sometimes it's not. She types, deletes, types again. Who gave you my number? A pause. A screenshot arrives. At the top, a black bar redacts a name. Beneath, only words. Please check on the nanny. She was the one in the room with the boy. The boy's name is redacted. The nanny looks out through glass. Serena moves through the living room, chin down, eyes memorizing a tablet. She's an art person. You can tell from the way she talks about shapes and negative space when she's with Theo. She is not cruel. She is also not here. Another text, meet someplace neutral, bring your NDA, bring your questions, not recorded unless you say yes. She meets him in a bakery where the coffee is burnt and honest. Caleb is the kind of man who carries a notebook even though his phone can do more. He waits until she sits before he speaks. He doesn't put on a recorder. Thank you, he says. I know this is... He searches for a word that is not a minefield. Hard. This is nothing, the nanny says. Hard is 3 jobs and no sleep. Then, because she can't stop the flood once the first stone rolls, she tells him what she can, careful with verbs. There was a test in the hospital. Dr. Chen said it didn't match the chart. He said it could be a mistake. Could be, Caleb nods. But according to internal Helixis guidelines I saw last year, ABO and RH typing are verified at intake. If both parents were recorded as AB positive and the child is O negative, that requires either a significant recording error or he lets the sentence trail. Or the recorded parents aren't the biological parents. The nanny's voice is a whisper across the table. Caleb flips open the notebook. The additional thing is your blood type. How do you know my blood type? He nods at the donation mark on her keyring, a small drop pin. The O negative club. My mother's a nurse. She spotted my keychain when I was a kid, made me get mine. Universal donor. Hospitals love you. Did the hospital draw yours? No. She looks at her hands. But I told them. Look, Caleb says. I cover systems, not gossip. According to public filings, Helixis moved quickly through approvals. According to a former medtech there, they were loose about chain of custody. That former tech is willing to talk if I can protect them. I think there's a bigger truth here than a single family. But I won't move an inch without your consent. The nanny feels something unfurl and recoil at the same time. She's used to being invisible. A hand, a bandage, a whisper at nap time, known intimately and not at all. You said a nurse called you, she says. A nurse texted, he corrects, quietly, because they saw a pattern, and the pattern scared them. The nanny remembers the janitor's eyes in the hallway, how he stopped like a man listening to thunder before lightning. Bring me something I can hold, she says finally. Paper, not a story. Caleb nods. According to court precedent, if there's evidence of a child's medical risk or identity fraud, a guardian ad litem can be appointed while facts are sorted. That gives a path to protect the child and protect you from retaliation. But we need evidence. She takes a deep breath that hurts like sprinting. Then we find it. The next day is routine with a hum of wrong. Breakfast at 7:30, school drop-off at 8:15. Theo waves at the crossing guard like he's old friends with the world. The nanny waits until he's inside, then walks the long way back, past coffee carts, past a flyer stapled to a pole. Volunteers needed, community health study. She remembers a folding chair and a nurse who called her sweetie at a clinic that smelled like bleach and peppermint oil. When she sits with Caleb again, it's at a public library where the security guard counts heads and lets people sleep as long as they don't snore. Caleb slides a manila folder across the table. According to hospital policy, he says, anytime a lab result is inconsistent with recorded parental data in a way that affects care, it triggers an internal review. He taps a single-page memo. This is that review. I obtained it lawfully under the hospital's transparency policy. Names redacted. She reads the paragraph 3 times. There are no conclusions, only questions. Consider potential charting error. Consider re-verification of parental blood types. The language is careful and metallic. There's more, Caleb says, and slides over another document. A court filing from 2 years ago. Family chose mediation, but before they settled, they filed this: allegations that Helixis used donor material not as consented. That's legal speak for the wrong egg, the wrong sperm, the wrong embryo. They buried it. According to the docket, they reached a confidential agreement. How did you get this? It's public if you know what to ask for. He smiles without triumph. I started asking after the nurse texted. The nanny's hands fist and unfist. I need to think. Of course. He waits. Do you remember a community health study about 3 years ago, screening women for anemia and nutritional deficiencies? There was a wellness stipend? Her heart does a thing like tripping up a step you thought wasn't there. She remembers signing a form because every hour worked matters when rent is as high as fear. She remembers a sleepy fog and a nurse saying, "We're just checking standard panels." She remembers being told to return for follow-up. She remembers leaving because work pays now and follow-up pays later. It was at a Helixis affiliate clinic, Caleb says. According to someone who worked there, they sometimes combined screening with collection if the patient consented to egg donation. Some signatures were obtained under sedation. That's what the whistleblower says. Egg donation? The nanny's voice cracks. I didn't... She stops. The sentence doesn't know how to end. According to the whistleblower, your name was on a batch sheet. Caleb opens his notebook. It could be wrong. It could be someone with your name. But if it's not, if an egg was taken without informed consent and used to create an embryo, that's a crime. It's theft of genetic material. It's fraud. The word theft settles in the air like dust, visible when light moves. I need to see my signature, the nanny says. I need to see documentation. Not your notes. Documents. I'm working to get them, Caleb says. The whistleblower is scared. Their job, their license. In the house on the hill, afternoon light makes a square of warm sun on the floor where Theo lays his trains. He makes quiet train sounds, an undertone to time. Serena floats in with a bag from a boutique. She watches them play, something almost stricken softening her face. Maybe she knows something is wrong. Maybe she's just practiced at looking. You're good with him, she says to the nanny later. You don't scare him into behaving. You place the rails and let him find the path. The nanny only nods. She feels like she's walking on transparent stone over something moving dark below. That night, she opens a drawer in the office. It's illegal to open drawers that don't belong to you. But injustice begins in careful rooms. She leafs through neatly arranged folders. Insurance forms, donation receipts for charity. A man whose name is on buildings knows where the paper shadows lie. Then she sees it. A glossy brochure, Helixis. On the back, a phone number, a code, initials in a delicate hand, SV. She takes a photo, puts it back exactly. Her phone lights. Caleb again. The whistleblower's in. We meet tonight. No recordings, you decide next steps. They meet behind a closed diner where the kitchen vent coughs steam into winter air. The whistleblower arrives in a sagging hoodie and an alertness that looks like hunger. Riley doesn't say their last name. I process samples, Riley says, hands in their pockets. I'm not a scientist. I'm a person who makes sure the barcode on the tube matches the barcode on the form. It's not glamorous, it's chain of custody, it's how truth keeps from falling off the truck. You said you had a batch sheet, Caleb says. Riley nods. They unfold a crumpled photocopy like a map, names cut off, numbers visible, dates. I can't give you raw scans. I'd be caught. This is a hand copy, but look. They point to a line. O, donor, 27F Maya O, 2 letters, blacked out, intake, outreach wellness study, consent initialed. The nanny's mouth feels full of pennies. That's me, she says. I'm O negative, 27, she breathes. I did not initial consent for egg donation. Riley shrugs their hoodie closer. Someone did. They tap the page. All I know is this lot went to a VIP client flagged special handling. I saw a courier with a case that could buy a row house. Do you have chain of custody logs? Caleb asks. Riley shakes their head. Everything digital is locked. But there's a thing. On the back of the sheet, Our supervisor wrote a code I only see when they worry about traceability. It means parts of the process were done off-system. That's a direct policy violation. That's what made me reach out when I saw your post about the hospital ABO mismatches. Because someone is building kids on a handshake where there should be a chain. The nanny leans against the brick wall. The world tilts, then rights itself. What do you want to do? Caleb asks her. Protect the boy, she says immediately. Everything else is later. Then we go legal, he says. According to counsel I work with, a judge can order a protective DNA test and freeze relevant records. It will be ugly. It's already ugly, the nanny says. She looks at Riley. Why risk this? Riley blows into their hands. Because I watched my cousin get told their baby died at birth in a clinic upstate. No body, no grave. Then I started this job and saw too many things that felt like someone was moving life around like money. I can't prove anything there. But this I can put a copy of in your hand. She takes the paper. It feels heavy as a door key. According to witness statements later, the next hours moved like a storm front. Caleb called a lawyer. The lawyer filed an emergency petition for preservation of evidence, citing potential identity fraud and a minor's medical interest. The judge assigned for night filings was a woman with a blunt bob and a reputation for hating grandstanding. She signed a narrow order: preserve hospital lab results, preserve Helix's intake documentation for the case code connected to the veils. The lawyer called the nanny. We'll need you to make a statement. It has to be on the record. Short, true. The nanny stood at her sink, the boy asleep in the next room. Toy trains like a river on the floor. I, Maya Ortiz, she said into the phone, voice steady, have reason to believe my genetic material was used without my informed consent to create a child currently in the care of Graham and Serena Vale. I fear for the safety of that child and myself if this comes to light without legal protections. I request appointment of a guardian ad litem for the child while the facts are investigated. The declaration moved across screens, from clerk to judge to attorney to a secure server. The first thing we can prove is that it existed. When Graham found out, it wasn't because the court called him. It was because his general counsel's assistant did. The assistant, a man who knew how to catch a punch under a conversation, said, We have a problem. He used the we as a shield. How? Graham asked. He was staring out at the city. The skyline was a graph of ambition. How did an entry-level employee and a nanny and a freelancer get this far? Because a judge signed an order, the assistant said flatly. Because preservation isn't proof, and yet it's already more than a rumor. Graham's lips thinned. We go on offense. The next day, a story appeared on a gossip site. It hinted at extortion. It called the nanny a domestic worker with a past. It suggested she had leaked sensitive family medical data for personal gain. It had no byline, only an editorial tone that sounded like a sneer in a nice suit. The nanny's phone lit up with 100 eyes. Her aunt texted, Are you okay? Her landlord texted, Nothing to worry? Her own name merged with a story she did not write. Caleb called. Don't read the comments, he said, a cliche he meant. We filed an injunction to stop further publication of health details. The judge granted it. Small win, but they're going to try to crush you in the court of opinion. Then we move in the court of record, she said, surprising herself. Serena came to the nursery at noon. She looked like she hadn't slept. She held a mug, just to keep her hands from shaking. They're attacking you, Serena said. She searched for the word. It wasn't unfair. Unfair was when the coffee machine ate your dollar. It's wrong. The nanny measured Theo's snack with mindful hands. I didn't start this. Serena's eyes were wet. I never asked questions I should have asked, she whispered. I wanted a child so badly. Then the clinic said there was a donor egg that matched my family traits. I signed. I thought I signed what I was supposed to. They told me it was a routine abstraction. A what? A legal term. A paper thing. They said the donor would never know, and it was ethical, and everyone was happy. Serena stared at the carpet. I didn't ask where the happiness was supposed to come from. You could help? The nanny said. You could tell the court what you know. You could tell them what you don't. A pause. Do you love him? Serena asked. The nanny frowned. He's my job. That's not an answer. The nanny's face softened. Defense is a second too slow. I love him like someone who knows when he lies about washing his hands. Like someone who knows the scar on his knee. Like someone who knows the songs that calm him. Serena nodded. Then help me help him. She put a white card on the dresser. It was embossed. The name was a law firm that haunted corporate boards. This is my lawyer. Call her. Use my name. I'm not promising I can blow up my life. I'm promising I can ask for a neutral space. By evening, the public interest lawyer, Priya Menon, sat at a table with the nanny and Caleb and Riley, the whistleblower, whose hoodie now felt like armor. Priya explained protections in plain words. We've obtained a temporary guardian ad litem for the child, someone who represents only the child. That person will request a court-ordered DNA test under seal. It won't go to tabloids. It will go to a lab chosen by the court. The hospital ABO mismatch gives us the medical basis. And the risk? The nanny asked. Priya didn't sugarcoat. Retaliation, legal threats, attempts at character attacks. But we have a judge who doesn't like circus, and we have a line we cannot step over. Do not break any laws to obtain evidence. No toothbrushes, no cut hair, only court-authorized samples. The whistleblower nodded. I can't get you more paper without exposing other patients. You've done enough, Priya said, with a lawyer's rare warmth. The rest is the court's job. According to the docket, the judge signed the DNA order the next morning. Samples would be collected at City General by a technician who only does family court cases. The results would be sealed. The child's guardian ad litem would see them. The parties could review in counsel's presence. No copies. Inside the house of glass, the nanny packed Theo's lunchbox. She wrote a note in his napkin. Remember, breathe slow like blowing out candles. He sounded out the words and smiled like he'd won a prize. City General's family services floor has linoleum that squeaks no matter how often it's mopped. The technician has hair in a cap and a voice like a calm weather report. Open, swab, seal, repeat. The process takes less than 3 minutes, which is obscene if you measure it against what it could change. Graham's lawyer tries to object to the swab for the nanny. Priya produces the order. She is a putative genetic contributor. The court recognizes her interest. The technician swabs her cheek with professional indifference. Theo watches. Does it hurt? He asks. The nanny smiles. Only if you swallow the stick. He giggles. In a room without windows, 2 weeks later, the guardian ad litem opens a file. Present are the nanny, represented by Priya, Graham, represented by 2 lawyers, Serena, with her own counsel sitting back like a shadow, and the judge, who decided to attend because too many people with power had tried to move this case into rooms with wine. According to the lab, the guardian says, the probability that Ms. Ortiz is the biological mother of the minor child exceeds 99.99%. The probability that Mr. Vale is the biological father is 0%. Silence sits in the chair next to each person. Graham laughs. 1 syllable. So the hospital screwed up. So did the clinic. It happens. We'll pay for counseling. The judge looks at him over reading glasses. That's not a word I would use for non-consensual acquisition and use of genetic material. Serena breathes out a sound like a sob swallowed before it can be born. Who is the father? She whispers to no one in particular. The guardian continues, professional as math. The lab's report notes that the child's paternal markers do not match Mr. Vale. They also note that the markers are consistent with a donor pool used by Helixis in the year of conception, based on a separate subpoena served on the clinic's anonymized records. They cannot determine the identity without further legal orders. Priya speaks for the first time since the results began. Your Honor, we request a protective order and immediate appointment of a temporary custodian for the minor child that reflects both the child's routine care and his best interests. Ms. Ortiz has been the primary caregiver for years. We are not asking for overnight changes. We are asking for safety. Graham leans forward. She is an employee. He presses the word like a stamp. She changes diapers. She is not equipped for, The judge raises a hand. Mr. Vale, we are not on your board. She turns to the guardian. Recommendation? The guardian has the voice of a woman who has sat with too many crying children and keeps doing the job anyway. Maintain the child's routine with Ms. Ortiz as primary daytime care under court appointment. Overnight custody remains with Mrs. Vale under supervision. Mr. Vale's contact with the minor is to be scheduled and supervised by Family Services pending investigation into the alleged fraud at Helixis. The court orders Helixis to produce full chain of custody documents for all materials used in this case. Graham's lawyer bristles. Will appeal. You will file motions, the judge corrects, and this is an order. On the way out of the room, Serena touches the nanny's sleeve. I'm sorry, she says. It's a small sentence working overtime. The nanny nods. She does not forgive. She does not prosecute. She simply files the sound of it where things are kept. According to the clerk's log, within hours of the order, Helixis filed a motion to quash the subpoena. The judge denied it. According to a document later entered into evidence, Helixis' chain of custody showed the O-donor material. The consent form was initialed with Ms. Ortiz's initials. A handwriting analyst later wrote, signatures inconsistent with known exemplars. In plain words, someone traced her name. It didn't take long for a press release to arrive, frosted like a cake. Helixis expressed profound concern and commitment to patient trust. They announced an independent investigation led by a firm that has never found a client guilty of anything more serious than insufficient transparency. Graham Vale posted a photo of himself with Theo at a zoo, captioned, "Family is everything." The comments were split between praise and a low hum of anger that sounded like electricity in a storm. Caleb published his first piece. The headline was not clever, it was clean. Court orders DNA test in case alleging fertility fraud. Nurse, Lab Tech City pattern. His tone was restrained. He wrote only what could be proven. According to court documents, according to hospital memos, according to a whistleblower, he did not quote the nanny by name. A senator's office called Caleb. "We've been worried about unregulated fertility chains," a staffer said. "If you have verifiable documentation, we'd like to brief the committee." Caleb said yes, but after the court saw it first, he was careful like that. Meanwhile, the house on the hill grew quiet and brittle. The nanny did her job under a court appointment now, a lanyard with a laminated card that gave her authority in places she'd once avoided. She took Theo to school. She sat with him under a tree and explained why there were new rules. "Grown-ups are figuring out the truth," she said. "While they do that, we have to be extra gentle." "Does gentle mean boring?" he asked in the sincere way of 5-year-olds. "Sometimes," she said, "but sometimes it means we get to read more." One evening, a black SUV idled outside the house. The driver didn't leave. He wasn't violating a law. He was violating a feeling. Priya called a contact. A patrol car rolled by twice an hour for a week. The SUV disappeared. Sometimes justice looks like a neighborhood cop doing loops while drinking gas station coffee so a woman can sleep. Riley, the whistleblower, received a letter from Helixis. Administrative leave pending investigation. Priya arranged pro bono representation. According to the letter Riley wrote back, they were willing to testify to any deviations from protocol they personally observed. That sentence would later anchor a subpoena when Helixis tried to claim it was all rogue employees. At a coffee stand near the courthouse, Serena and the nanny stood side by side with their paper cups. Serena said, "When this is over, what do you want?" The nanny didn't look at her. "For a child to never be a product." Serena swallowed. "I thought we were building a family. I didn't know we were building a case." The nanny turned. "Those are not mutually exclusive if you start in truth." Serena nodded, a small motion that looked like learning. Part 8. The hearing where the room tilted. The courthouse lacks glamour. It makes equality by taking away the gold. Fluorescent light, uncomfortable benches, a bailiff calls the room to order, not like a movie, but like someone who has done it 1,000 times. On the stand is a former Helixis nurse who is asked to be called by her first name only. "According to our training," she says, "we were supposed to obtain consent for any egg retrieval with a full briefing. But there were times when patients from outreach programs were scheduled for panels and were given sedation for transvaginal ultrasounds. In some of those cases, signatures were on file when they were groggy. I raised concerns. I was told we were streamlining." The Helixis attorney objects. "Hearsay, speculation." The judge allows only the parts that are firsthand. That's plenty. The nurse describes forms countersigned by a supervisor. She describes chain of custody logs with codes matching the one on Riley's hand copy. She does not cry. She speaks like a person who has waited years to be believed. Next, a handwriting analyst testifies. "Based on the known samples of Ms. Ortiz's signature from employment records," she says, "and the contested consent forms, there are deviations in stroke, pressure, and letter formation consistent with simulation. In my professional opinion, the consent initials are not hers." Mr. Vale's attorneys lean into a point. "Are you saying our client forged signatures?" The analyst keeps her professional mask. "I am saying the contested forms do not match Ms. Ortiz's hand. I am not saying who wrote them." Serena is called. She sits straight. Her voice is a glass with water in it, visible and plain. "According to the clinic intake, I was told we'd be matched with a donor that shared my ethnicity and that we would sign endless forms. I was told not to worry about the specifics because our legal team would ensure it was all standard. I did sign. I did not read each page closely. I regret that. And Mr. Vale?" the lawyer asks. Serena pauses. "He trusted the clinic. That's what he told me." In the gallery, the nanny sits rigid, hands in her lap. Her lawyer squeezes her elbow once, a silent calibrator. The judge clears her throat. "At issue today is the protective order and the appointment of a long-term custodian while criminal investigations proceed. Enough has been shown for me to be concerned, gravely, that non-consensual use of genetic material occurred. The child's best interest is to maintain his bonds, including the bond with his primary caregiver." She looks at the nanny. "Ms. Ortiz, you have demonstrated the steadiness this child needs. The court appoints you as co-guardian with Mrs. Vale pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. Mr. Vale's access remains supervised. Graham blinks like an actor who didn't expect the third act twist. He stands. I built companies that help people. I funded women's health programs. You can't. The law can, the judge says, almost weary. And the law does. According to a press pool in the hallway, the mood after was not celebratory. It was sober. People hugged without smiling. Priya told cameras, "This is not about scandal. It's about consent, care, and the safety of a child." Caleb took notes. He would write later. The system almost did what it was supposed to do. Almost, because there were still gaps. Part 9. The indictment that didn't fix everything. Months passed, as they do in real life, with a grind and occasional fireworks. A grand jury indicted 3 Helixus managers on counts of fraud, forgery, and unlawful use of human reproductive material. The indictment used words that sound like anesthesia until you imagine the bodies under them. Graham Vale was not named, but an email surfaced. According to the email, he had written, "VIP clients expect results. Do what you have to do. I don't need details." His lawyers said that was about customer service, not consent. The U.S. Attorney's Office said a jury could decide what results meant. Charges against Graham would later be filed for obstruction, pressuring employees to destroy logs. He pled not guilty. He posted a bond that could buy a hospital wing. Riley testified under immunity. They kept their hoodie. They kept their job nowhere. A small fund, started by Caleb's readers, paid their rent. The nurse who testified found work at a community clinic where a poster on the wall read, "Consent is a conversation, not a signature." Serena filed for separation. According to the petition, irreconcilable differences began the day the truth hit paper. She moved to an apartment with less glass and more blinds. She and the nanny learned to pass the child between them with kindness. It wasn't always smooth. It was human. Theo learned new words: guardian, lawyer, judge. He learned that adults can be wrong and still show up in the morning. He started soccer and hated it, then loved it. He asked the nanny once, sitting in the back seat where booster seats make philosophers, "Are you my mom?" She did not cry because she'd promised herself she wouldn't make him carry that. "I am someone who will always take care of you," she said. Right now, that's the truest thing. Later, when the child therapist said it was time, when the court said they could, when the adults agreed on a script, she told him, in a room with crayons and a rug shaped like a planet, "I am your mom." He nodded like he'd known at the edge of his knowing. He hugged her with small arms that anchored future. Caleb published a series. It was not salacious. It was a ledger, stories of others, unsealed with permission, where clinics cut corners and people paid. It prompted a hearing. Senators spoke into microphones with voices that pretended to be steel. Draft legislation formed to regulate fertility clinics like the medical institutions they are, not the businesses they pretend to be. It moved slowly, like everything that matters. One evening, after soccer, the nanny and Serena stood at the sideline as kids attempted to become a team. "I used to think courage was a speech," Serena said. "And now?" the nanny asked. "Now I think it's packing a lunch and showing up at court twice a week." Serena smiled. He's lucky to have 2 women who will put rails down for him and let him be a train. They watched him run. The field lights came on. There was no music, only the sound of feet and whistles in a city-making evening. According to a final court order entered that winter, the child's birth certificate would be amended to reflect his biological mother. Custody agreements would recognize both women as guardians. The father would be listed as unknown until further proceedings. Graham objected. The court overruled. He appealed. He lost. Some stories end not in fire, but in paperwork. The last hearing in the criminal case was technical. Terms were negotiated. Pleas were entered. Graham received a sentence any working person would call light, framed by fines that were numbers, not lessons. The managers who cut corners accepted responsibility. The clinic shuttered. A new nonprofit emerged, founded by people who'd been hurt, dedicated to consent education and patient advocacy. It offered small grants to people like Riley, who wanted to keep a roof over their heads while telling the truth. On a bench outside City General, the place where the first paper said no, the nanny sat with Caleb. He had a reporter's notebook, like always. He also had a thermos and 2 cups. He poured coffee that tasted like relief. "You never use my name," she said. "I didn't need it to tell the story," he said. What mattered was what could be verified. He looked at Theo playing nearby with a cheap soccer ball, the same kind they use everywhere in the world where kids make fields out of flat ground. "What will you tell him when he's older?" "The truth," she said. That he was not a scandal, that he was a person, that people with money thought they could write biology like code, and found out life isn't a startup. Caleb packed up his notebook. "You became the person in the story you didn't want to be." "I was always the person," she said. "You just wrote it down." Serena walked over. She had a bandage on her finger from a kitchen knife that morning. Her nail polish was chipped. She looked like someone living in the world now, not above it. "Dinner at my place next week?" she asked. "Spaghetti and 2 glasses of wine?" "3," the nanny said. They smiled the sort of smile that didn't erase anything and still drew a line forward. According to the last page of the file, the judge said one thing at the end that wasn't procedural. She looked at the room and said, "The hardest thing about justice is how ordinary it looks. It's schedules and forms and patience. And sometimes when we do it right, it's also a child who gets to know the truth before someone sells it." The nanny took Theo's hand. They crossed the street when the light said walk, because that's the rule, and rules matter until they don't. The city smelled like hot pretzels and bus brakes. The world didn't applaud. It moved. Moral reflection. According to every document that mattered, someone thought consent could be drafted in later. It can't. According to every witness who stepped forward, truth was a risk. It still is. But sometimes the smallest person in the room, the one paid to be invisible, becomes the definition of visible. Courage isn't what you say, it's the proof you carry. Disclaimer: like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage.